We're going to plunge into the heart of this mysterious and miraculous 9-month-long odyssey, the birth of a child. At the very beginning, there's, of course, the seed that the man deposits in the woman's belly. Spermatozoids by the millions, a flood, a torrent of spermatozoids. And they all will die, all except one. For them, these messengers of life, it's the beginning of a veritable treasure hunt, an all-out sprint of several hours towards a romantic rendezvous. And at the finish, perhaps, the reward for the victor and the fantastic promise of new life, the encounter with an ovule. Propelled by their wriggling flagella, the spermatozoid advance past one obstacle after another. The vagina with its deadly acidity, the crowded bottleneck of the cervix, the womb itself. A real obstacle course. The most fragile, the misshapen, and the stragglers give up. The others get sidetracked and lose their way or get trapped. Here we have two diverging tunnels, two possible paths. But the thing is, only one of these paths leads to the ovule. In this frantic rush towards life, energy is not the only thing that counts. Luck and fate also play their part. There are strong currents that slow them down. A carpet of cilia is undulating in waves and impeding their progress. Try to imagine. The contestants that are still in the race have almost covered an equivalent distance on their scale of that from the Earth to the Moon. And yet, the irrepressible force of life relentlessly drives them forward. At last, there at the end of the long, dark tunnel, like a mysterious star, the ovule. All it takes is one spermatozoid, just one, to reach the ovule, penetrate and merge with it, for the spark of life to be born. Each one of these millions of spermatozoids carries its own secret, and here is where the lottery of life is being played out. By now, there are only about 100 left, and they're exploring the surface of the ovule. Only a few of them will manage to penetrate as far as the capsule, a daunting coat of protective armor. The final flurry of excitement, one last frenzy, and all of a sudden, one of them manages to find its way in. It's done. This is the chosen one, the one and only. As soon as the shell is pierced, it hardens, and the other spermatozoids come up against an impenetrable barrier. For them, the voyage is finished. So near and yet so far. For the winner, the journey continues. It loses its now useless flagellum and frees its treasure. Manu's genetic inheritance unites with Barbara's. This union will result in a cell that is unique in the world. A dream of love, the fruit of desire, and already the beginnings of life. An egg. From this instant on, everything, or almost everything, is already determined. And then the process speeds up. A new life is getting organized. A new adventure is beginning. The egg immediately divides into 2, then 4, 8, 16, 32 identical cells. At the same time, it sets out on a long, slow voyage. On the 3rd day of its expedition, it plunges into the huge grotto that will become its home, the womb. On the 6th day, the egg leaves its protective shell and settles gently on the wall of this cozy protective refuge. It builds its nest where, barring any accidents, it takes up residence for 9 months. As the egg burrows into the supple wall of the womb, it undergoes a radical transformation. First, it sets up the connections with its environment. This will become the placenta, an interface that will handle the continual exchanges with Barbara's body. Meanwhile, at the center, a disc is forming. The egg is becoming an embryo. It's 14 days old, and it's not even as big as the head of a pin. A few days later, the embryo has grown considerably thicker. It is now settled in the center of two liquid-filled pouches. It is being convulsed by a flood of transformations, which start with the formation of the nervous system. A groove takes shape along its back. Then, like a hem, it folds over along its entire length and becomes a tube. This is the future spinal cord, and these two giant protrusions are the future cerebral hemispheres. Meanwhile, the embryo has curled up on itself. A rudimentary heart slowly takes form. Blood vessels take shape. The circulatory system is traced out. As it grows, the embryo strangely resembles first a fish, then a little later a batrachian, and finally a reptile. And all this is according to plan, for as the human embryo develops, it passes through all the stages of evolution of the species. It even still has its tail, which it will soon lose. In less than 4 weeks, the egg has grown from a single cell to several million cells, all perfectly coordinated with each other. For this tiny organism is the ingenious architect of its own construction. Let's take a moment to look more closely at just one of the many mysterious phenomena. A story of a heart, a beating heart. All these little red spheres are the cells of the future heart. One after another, they come alive and begin to beat in unison. This basic rhythm is the beat of life. The blood pump, the life machine has kicked in. The embryo is only 22 days old, and it now measures 2 millimeters. It's the beginning of a new and spectacular metamorphosis. 4 weeks full of transformations that give form to our little aquatic mammal. Drawing nutrition and energy from its mother's body through the placenta, the embryo gradually takes on a human form. The shape of the face is sketched out, and soon 2 small darkish bumps appear. They will become the eyes. Eyes still without eyelids, but already eyes. And little by little, all the other organs are taking shape. The cartilage, the muscles, and the tendons are gradually developing. The embryo is now 34 days old and is 5 millimeters long. Its growth has accelerated so much that it grows a millimeter every day. While the arms and the legs take shape, the tail, on the contrary, is gradually getting reabsorbed and will soon be replaced by the coccyx. The orifices of the mouth and nostrils form, and the neck becomes more slender. Meanwhile, the brain continues its lightning evolution and is already preparing its role as orchestra leader of all the body's functions. The little being is 44 days old and measures 17 millimeters in length. The eyes are edged with thin protective lids. The bones in the back solidify, the head straightens up. The heart, the main blood vessels, and most of the organs have settled into their permanent positions and begin to function. 60 days old, the embryo, which we'll call the fetus from now on, is 3 centimeters long and weighs just under 11 grams. Barbara is coming to the end of her 2nd month of pregnancy, and everything is going smoothly. Her child still has 7 months to grow in the warmth of her womb, in its protected world. Was that a distant echo of his parents' joy? Barbara and Manu's baby, who had been practically immobile up until now, all of a sudden starts to move. For the moment, they're no more than imperceptible twitches, too subtle for the mother to notice. To understand what's happening, Let's try to take a look at the invisible. Let's try to get inside the brain of this future child. Here, with every passing minute, new neurons are being created by the thousands. And at the same time, these neurons are linking up with each other. This ingenious network will allow the fetus to control the muscles and all the organs with information transmitted in the form of electrical and chemical messages. So, at birth, Barbara and Manu's baby will have more than 100 billion neurons linked together by 1 billion connections. Even the most technologically advanced computer or telephone system in the world is nothing compared to the vast complexity of the human brain. And with this marvelous machinery, the seat of the mind is slowly developing. The taste of bread will be localized here. The pleasure of words will spring up from this spot. All the joys and sorrows will flow out of here, and laughter or anger will burst from there. As if this flood of changes were resonating in him, the fetus moves and twitches every which way, but Barbara still doesn't feel anything. The meal Barbara has just eaten is heading down her esophagus. In her stomach, the food will be broken down into its nutrients, sugars, fats, and proteins. After several other stages of digestion, it will be absorbed into the bloodstream. Then, these nutrients will go from the mother to the child, passing through the placenta, an amazingly efficient filter, for it rejects the components that are too large, like most bacteria, which could be harmful. The other smaller elements can pass through the barrier. Oxygen, sugars, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and also, a word to the wise, alcohol and caffeine. Once they are in the fetal blood, these elements are carried to the future baby by the umbilical cord. Julia is becoming more and more aware of her body and its position, the space around her, and her mother's movements. For several months now, our little acrobat has been doing somersaults. But this could very well be her last flip, because it's getting more and more cramped in there. Could she be getting ready to come out head first, like 95% of all babies? And now, the magical moment. The fetus shifts into the position. Even today, this remains a mystery. After 7 months of cloud-free pregnancy, round-the-clock monitoring has now been set up to spare Julia any suffering. Thanks to an ultrasound probe, the doctors can regularly check the heartbeat. The bones of Julia's skull are not yet fused together. Her head will be able to deform and adapt when she leaves the mother's womb. Between the bones, we can perceive the surface of the brain with all its furrows and folds. As these furrows form, the cerebral functions become more localized, more specific. The brain is laying out its definitive topography. Here you have odors, and there sounds. Here images, and there words. At this stage, The child's brain is efficient enough to control its principal vital functions like breathing and digestion. Julia is ready to feel her first emotions. A first contraction, long and deep. Barbara and Julia embark on their labor. It's the beginning of birth. The baby's head is pushing against the cervix, which gradually shortens and dilates. And then, all at once, the waters break.
Again. More. More, more, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, rest. There, the baby really moved down.
Let's go one last time. You can get her out now. Hold your breath and give a big push. Stop, don't push anymore.
Hold it, easy now, I have her little head.
Open your eyes, open your eyes.
Let everything go, reach down here.
Reach your hands down.
Take your baby. And here's your little bambina.
Attendez, on va mettre sur le côté qu'elle puisse quand même respirer. This way. Bon.